So, Madam President, as I mentioned, I wanted to come to the floor and put a word in Richard Cordray, who's been nominated to lead the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is otherwise known as the CFPB. Nearly 2 months ago, I urged our leaders to prioritize a vote on the nominee because without a director of the CFPB, there is important consumer protection work that's being left undone. It's work that would benefit hardworking Coloradans, those citizens of New Hampshire, and families all across our nation. So I want to begin my remarks by thanking both the Majority Leader and the Republican Leader for moving to this important nomination. After having done that, I want to turn and speak directly to Coloradans and any other Americans who may be listening today. You know, we get up here as senators and we'll talk about this agency or that agency, and in all frankly, at times it sounds like an alphabet soup. But this agency is not just another alphabet agency. The CFPB may be one of the most important federal agencies that we have, and it should be allowed to open its doors fully and begin the important work of protecting our consumers. The CFPB was created in the Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act to protect American consumers from predatory and unfair financial practices. It was chartered to prevent the same kinds of abuses that banks and other large financial firms engaged in as they drove our economy into the ditch just a few short years ago. When we look back at the financial collapse in 2008, many of us still can't believe that the largest banks and financial institutions in our country were able to put our economy at such risk. And as drastic measures had to be taken and billions of dollars invested in these firms, it certainly didn't seem fair that banks and other financial institutions should get taxpayer help after having taken advantage of the good intentions of American consumers and, as a result, tanking our economy. But the truth is we were forced to act here in the Congress, or even worse financial troubles awaited us. In fact, potentially a worldwide financial depression. So that backdrop, that's really why the Congress created the CFPB, to ensure that that kind of abuse never happens again. And when we passed the Wall Street Reform Act, Congress made clear its intent to create a watchdog with the responsibility to make the financial marketplace safe for consumers. I think the presiding officer would agree that that's something that we should all want, to ensure that Americans aren't being taken advantage of by big businesses and Wall Street bankers, to ensure that someone's out looking for the little guy, to ensure that there's just slightly more of a level playing field for the Americans who play by the rules. And unfortunately, it's not. Many of our colleagues are raising a host of issues related to one central argument, that the CFPB will not be accountable to Congress and that it will go hog wild in its efforts to look out for hardworking Americans. Yes, Madam President, that's right. They argue that the CFPB will have too much power to protect consumers. I know that seems strange to hear, especially after the banking sector abuses nearly sent our economy down an irrecoverable path, and millions of Americans saw many of their investments and much of their net worth disappear overnight. But yes, some of our colleagues actually want to weaken the consumer protections that were included in the Wall Street Reform Bill, which, by the way, is the law of the land. And in order to make sure that that happens, they've vowed to filibuster all nominees to head the CFPB, regardless of who they are. There's been blanket statements made at the front end of this effort that whoever the nominee is, that person will be blocked. It strikes me that by doing that, they think that they're going to deny the CFPB a director, and then that will erode the Bureau's effectiveness and make it easier for banks to operate without limitation. And that's precisely why we have to overcome the filibuster that's being waged against Mr. Cordray right now. Without his leadership and a strong CFPB to look out after the interests of consumers, we're going to put the financial security of hardworking American families at risk and the country's economic recovery at risk. By failing to give the CFPB a director, a confirmed director, we're actually reducing oversight of predatory lending and deceptive banking practices. These are practices that in no way help our economy and our economic recovery. Now, I don't think I'm stretching the facts in saying this. Deceptive financial practices continue to threaten Americans every day, and we can do more to ensure that these abuses are brought to an end. Let me focus on one particular area. Credit reporting agencies continue their deceptive ads on websites with misleading names such as www.freescore.com and www.freecreditscore.com that lure people into a costly credit monitoring service, and they do not offer free credit scores at all. Instead, what they do is they take your credit card number and then they begin charging you a monthly fee. It's a similar hustle that many other too-good-to-be-true websites offer. The problem is that this deceptive ad strikes at the heart of Americans' personal financial health. A person starts off by doing the responsible thing, trying to check their credit score, but the next thing they know, their credit card is being charged, and they don't have that important data tied to their credit score. So the point I'm trying to make is without a confirmed director, the CFPB has diminished power to investigate the actions of the major credit reporting agencies and pull down these kinds of deceptive ads. That just doesn't make any sense to me. It's the sort of thing that Coloradans have been asking me along these lines. When are you guys in D.C., when are you guys in the Senate are going to side with us and stop always looking out for the big banks? And in these tough economic times, we need to do all we can to block such dishonest advertisements and help empower consumers to avoid these financial traps. And the CFPB is the best way to accomplish these important goals. But it needs a director to be able to act. Now, as some watching today know, and I hope Coloradans know, the Wall Street Reform Bill contained a bipartisan provision that I authored that now requires lenders and other creditors to actually provide consumers a free credit score when their score is used to deny them credit or they're offered credit on less favorable terms. And I authored this provision because credit scores are the most important and influential measure of a consumer's credit worthiness. And as millions of Americans continue to work to repair their credit status in the wake of the nation's worst financial collapse since the Great Depression, it's my belief that the CFPB must fully implement its congressionally appointed oversight of consumer credit scores and related products to stop deceptive advertisements and other setups. So I'll say it again. In order to carry out this mission, the Senate must confirm a director to head the CFPB. The Consumers Union, Madam President, one of the leading consumer advocates in the U.S., is urging Congress to confirm Mr. Cordray so the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau can tackle other critical consumer protections like reducing the penalty fees and punitive interest rates banks can charge, requiring credit rating agencies to maintain accurate consumer credit files and investigate and fix errors reported by consumers. As an aside, Madam President, I know you've heard stories about consumers who are operating in good faith and they come to find out their credit files are not accurate, and then they're penalized because of that situation. The CFPB could require credit agencies to maintain accurate files. And finally, the CFPB could police the mortgage market to stop scams against consumers and prevent the return of the toxic loans and the dangerous lending practices that led to the foreclosure crisis and ultimately the recession. I don't think I'm overstating the situation when I say there are still a slew of unsafe financial products and services in the marketplace. When consumers are lured into those traps, they then can get into a high-interest debt situation, and then that affects all of us. That affects our economic health more broadly. So the CFPB would be given the capacity to tackle these abusive and deceptive practices and then be on the lookout for the next breed of financial scams. Madam President, I'd ask unanimous consent for an additional 30 seconds.
Is there objection? Without objection.
For these reasons, Madam President, it's my hope that the Senate will take action quickly to confirm Mr. Cordray's nomination and then put in place an effective consumer financial watchdog to ensure Americans get the tools they need to take control of their own financial destinies. It'll help our economy. It'll help Americans. It'll help small businesses. This is the right thing to do. Let's confirm this gentleman to head the CFPB. Madam President, thank you for your attention.